The greatest paradox of the narcissist lies not in their confidence, but in their terror. They appear larger than life, strutting through rooms with an inflated sense of superiority, but beneath the mask is a trembling fear, the fear of power they cannot control. To a narcissist, your strength is not merely threatening, it is annihilating. It reminds them of everything they lack, everything they hide, and everything they can never truly possess. At the root of narcissism is a fragile ego constructed from borrowed pieces, praise from others, admiration, and control. Their sense of identity is not self-sustained, it is parasitic. They need someone to believe in their illusion so that they themselves can believe in it. But the moment you step into authentic power, you cut off the oxygen that keeps their false self alive. Your self-assurance does not need their approval, and your worth does not bend to their opinion. That, for them, is intolerable. What makes a narcissist panic is not your hostility, but your independence. They can fight anger with anger. They can manipulate guilt with guilt. But they cannot compete with someone who no longer plays the game. Your confidence leaves them without tools, without leverage, without hooks to sink into your psyche. They thrive when you doubt yourself, question your worth, or crave their validation. But when you rise beyond those chains, you become untouchable in a way they cannot comprehend. Think about it. Their entire existence revolves around control. They must orchestrate how others see them, how others feel about them, how others respond to them. When they sense this control slipping, it is not just uncomfortable, it is existential terror. They feel as though they are dissolving, losing grip on the very illusion that sustains them. That is why your personal power becomes their deepest nightmare. It exposes their fragility. It reveals the cracks in their carefully polished mask. Power in its truest form does not need to dominate. It does not need to control. Real strength radiates silently like a flame that simply burns regardless of who notices. A narcissist cannot understand this because their idea of power is domination. To them, power means someone wins and someone loses. But your strength is different. It is not about controlling others. It is about mastering yourself, and that is precisely why it terrifies them. Imagine a chess master who has spent their life playing against amateurs. They thrive because they know the rules better than anyone else, manipulating every move, predicting every reaction. But then one day, they face someone who refuses to sit at the board at all. Suddenly, the game collapses. There are no moves to make, no strategies to employ, no victories to claim. That is what it feels like for a narcissist when they encounter true power. You refuse the board, you refuse the manipulation, and without the game they are nothing. This fear manifests in many ways. Sometimes it appears as rage, an explosive attempt to reassert control, to shake your foundation. Other times it comes as covert sabotage, whispers, rumors, subtle digs meant to weaken you. And at its most desperate, it transforms into victimhood. They cry, they plead, they paint themselves as the wounded soul, hoping to lure you back into a role of rescuer or fixer. But beneath every strategy is the same root cause fear. Fear of your autonomy, fear of your independence, fear of your unshakable center. It is important to understand that this fear is not about you personally. It is about what you represent. To a narcissist, you are a symbol of freedom, of authenticity, of truth. And truth is their natural enemy. Their entire existence is built upon illusion, performance, and projection. The stronger you grow in your truth, the more it highlights their deception. The more self-sustained you become, the more it reveals their dependence. You are the mirror that reflects their emptiness, and they will do anything to avoid that reflection. Your power challenges the foundation of their false self. It forces them to face the uncomfortable reality that control is an illusion, that love cannot be coerced, and that worth cannot be manufactured through dominance. To acknowledge your strength would mean acknowledging their weakness. To accept your independence would mean facing their dependence. And so, instead of evolving, they attack. Instead of growing, they destroy. Their fear blinds them, driving them into the very behaviors that expose their vulnerability to the world. This is why your strength is not just a shield, it is a revelation. The more you stand in your authenticity, the more their mask slips. The more you remain calm in the storm, the more their chaos reveals itself. They want you to doubt, to bend, to crumble, because that reassures them that they are still in control. But every time you refuse to react, every time you hold your ground, you shatter that illusion further. The narcissist's fear of power is ultimately the fear of truth. It is the fear of being seen, not for who they pretend to be, but for who they truly are, and your strength makes that vision unavoidable. You are not their enemy, but you are their undoing, because your authenticity unmasks their fraudulence. The stronger you grow, the more they realize that their grip on you was never real. It was only ever borrowed from your willingness to believe in their false narrative. When the narcissist realizes that all their usual methods no longer work, they reach for one final strategy. It does not come from strength, but from panic. It is not calculated brilliance, but sheer desperation cloaked in theatrics. This last trick is their attempt to regain control when every mask has cracked and every manipulation has failed. It is the moment where they reveal themselves most clearly, not as powerful beings, but as desperate souls gasping for relevance. The narcissist thrives on patterns: gaslighting, guilt, triangulation, charm, rage. Tools that once worked to keep you bound. But once you see through these tools, once you no longer respond with confusion or compliance, their arsenal grows empty. This is the point where their fear transforms into a final act of sabotage. They disguise desperation as strategy, pretending they still hold the upper hand, when in reality it is the cry of a collapsing empire. This last trick often comes in the form of a smear campaign. They realize they cannot control you directly, so they attempt to control how others see you. They twist narratives, distort facts, and spread half-truths to paint you as the villain. To them, it does not matter if the story is believable. What matters is planting enough doubt to damage your image. In their mind, if they cannot own your heart, they will try to own your reputation. But the smear campaign is not power, it is confession. It confesses that they no longer have access to you, that you have slipped beyond their grasp. At other times, the final trick comes disguised as sudden vulnerability. They play the victim, portraying themselves as misunderstood, fragile, even broken. They may cry, plead, or beg for forgiveness, claiming they have changed or that you are the only one who truly understands them. This performance is not an awakening, it is bait. It is desperation dressed as humility. They do not seek reconciliation, they seek reinstatement. They want you back in the role that sustained their illusion. The final trick may also emerge as provocation. When silence and indifference terrify them, they may resort to shocking behavior, meant to trigger a reaction. Reckless acts, reckless words, even self-destructive gestures. To them, any response, even anger or disgust, is better than your calm detachment. Their desperation drives them to extremes because nothing feels more unbearable than your refusal to play their game. What ties all these tactics together is the disguise. They do not present their desperation openly because vulnerability is what they fear most. Instead, they cloak it in false authority, in emotional manipulation, or in moral outrage. They make their panic look like righteousness, their sabotage look like truth, their collapse look like control. But beneath the mask, it is the same reality. They are unraveling, and they are afraid. This stage is the most revealing part of the narcissistic dynamic. It shows how little of their persona was ever real. The grandeur, the superiority, the charm, all of it was a carefully maintained performance. When the performance no longer works, desperation floods to the surface. And desperation, no matter how it is dressed, is unmistakable. You can hear it in the frantic tone, see it in the erratic behavior, and feel it in the hollow attempts to pull you back into orbit. Understanding this truth is crucial because the final trick can be persuasive if you do not recognize it for what it is. A smear campaign can make you doubt yourself, wondering if others see you through the lens of their lies. Their tears can stir guilt, making you question whether you abandoned someone who truly needed you. Their provocations can ignite anger, tempting you to react and give them the drama they crave. But each of these temptations is a trap. They are not signs of regained power. They are signs of disintegration. When you see the final trick clearly, it loses its power. You recognize that the smear campaign does not define you, but exposes their fear of being forgotten. You see that the sudden vulnerability is not a doorway to healing, but a lure back into the cycle. You realize that the provocations are not attacks on your strength, but desperate grabs for your attention. Their disguise falls apart the moment you refuse to be deceived by it. The narcissist's final trick is not the climax of their dominance. It is the epitaph of it. It is the move of someone who has run out of moves, the cry of someone whose illusions have shattered. They dress it in rage, in sorrow, in righteousness, but at its core, it is the last breath of their control. And once you see it for what it is, you recognize that desperation, no matter how loudly it screams, can never masquerade as true power. One of the most insidious tactics a narcissist employs is projection. It is not merely a defense mechanism, nor is it an unconscious slip of the psyche. In the hands of a narcissist, projection becomes a deliberate form of psychological warfare. It is a weapon sharpened by fear and wielded with precision, designed to confuse, destabilize, and ultimately destroy the confidence of those who dare to stand in truth. Projection is the act of taking what exists inside oneself and attributing it to another. The narcissist takes their anger, their dishonesty, their insecurity, their cruelty, and places it on you. If they lie, suddenly you are the liar. If they manipulate, suddenly you are accused of being manipulative. If they betray, suddenly you are the unfaithful one. It is a reversal of reality so convincing, so venomous, that it leaves you questioning your own integrity. To the narcissist, projection serves two purposes. First, it allows them to avoid the unbearable act of self-reflection. They cannot face their flaws without shattering the fragile mask they live behind, so they cast those flaws outward, turning their own shadow into your supposed crime. Second, Projection places them back in the position of control. If they can make you defend yourself, if they can make you doubt your truth, then they have regained the upper hand. Their guilt becomes your burden, their shame becomes your struggle. But when projection becomes warfare, it is no longer about private accusations, it escalates into campaigns of distortion. They spread their false narratives to others, painting you as the aggressor, the abuser, the selfish one. They turn allies into skeptics and bystanders into judges. Suddenly, you find yourself surrounded by whispers, looks, and doubts that seem to confirm the lies. This is projection weaponized. It is not about resolving conflict, but about winning a battle by rewriting the story of who you are. What makes this tactic so devastating is its psychological depth. Human beings naturally internalize the opinions of others, and when those opinions are delivered with confidence, they can create cracks in even the strongest foundations. A narcissist knows this. They know that if they accuse you with enough conviction, others will pause, and in that pause, doubt is planted. They know that if they push hard enough, you may even begin to question yourself. Am I the one who is wrong? Did I do something to cause this? That self-doubt is the fertile soil in which their power grows. Projection also operates as a mirror trap. You see yourself reflected in their accusations, not because it is true, but because you are forced to confront what they claim. You spend your energy disproving their lies, defending your character, trying to restore the balance of reality. Meanwhile, the narcissist sits back, watching you exhaust yourself in a battle you never asked for. They have turned your own empathy, your own sense of responsibility into a weapon against you. This is why projection is more than simple blame shifting. It is warfare. It seeks to destabilize your mind, fracture your relationships, and erode your confidence until you are easier to control. It is a strategy of psychological inversion. The guilty become innocent, the victim becomes aggressor, the abuser becomes the misunderstood soul. And in this upside-down world, the narcissist stands protected, while you are left carrying the weight of their sins. Yet the very use of projection reveals something the narcissist does not want you to see: their terror of being exposed. Every accusation they hurl is a confession in disguise. When they call you selfish, they are revealing their own self-absorption. When they label you a liar, they are admitting their own deceit. When they accuse you of cruelty, they are pointing to the cruelty that lives within them. Their warfare is nothing more than a smoke screen designed to hide the battlefield of their own fractured soul. The antidote to projection is awareness. Once you recognize the tactic for what it is, you begin to see the pattern. You stop absorbing their accusations as truth and start translating them as revelations. Their words cease to define you and instead expose them. Every projection becomes a mirror held backward, showing you not who you are, but who they are trying desperately to conceal. Refusing to engage in their battle is the most powerful stance you can take. You do not need to defend yourself against lies designed to trap you. You do not need to prove your innocence to those who are committed to misunderstanding you. Your silence, your clarity, your refusal to carry their shadow is the weapon they cannot defeat. When you step outside the battlefield, their projections collapse under their own weight. Projection as warfare is a desperate strategy of a soul that cannot bear its own reflection. It is an attempt to rewrite reality so they can continue to escape themselves. But in truth, Every arrow they launch toward you is stolen from their own quiver of shame. They are not revealing you. They are confessing themselves, and the more they project, the clearer that confession becomes in a world where noise dominates every interaction. Silence becomes the most unsettling force of all. To the narcissist, silence is not simply the absence of words, it is the absence of control. It is a refusal to engage in their chaos, a withdrawal of the energy they depend on to fuel their illusions. Silence, when born from strength rather than fear, becomes a fortress that no manipulation can penetrate. It is the language of power without aggression, the shield that requires no retaliation. Narcissists thrive on reactions: anger, tears, confusion, arguments. These responses feed them because they confirm their ability to stir emotions within you. They do not care whether the response is positive or negative. What matters is that you are entangled. Every time you defend yourself against their false accusations, every time you explain your worth, every time you react to their provocations, you give them proof that they still matter in your internal world. But when you choose silence, you deprive them of this nourishment. You deny them the satisfaction of seeing their chaos reflected back at them. This silence is not weakness. It is not retreat. It is the expression of mastery over your own emotions. It says, "You cannot dictate the rhythm of my mind. You cannot pull me into battles that serve only your hunger." True silence is active, not passive. It is the deliberate choice to withhold energy from the games that no longer deserve your participation. It is the moment you realize that peace is not found in proving your truth to the blind, but in living your truth regardless of their blindness. The strength of inner silence terrifies the narcissist because it strips away their stage. They thrive on drama, on conflict, on endless explanations where they can twist your words and manipulate your intentions. But silence offers them no foothold. They cannot twist what is not spoken. They cannot distort what is not offered. They are left with the unbearable reality of facing themselves without distraction. Your silence forces them into a mirror they cannot shatter, and that is the battlefield they fear most. Psychologically, silence creates dissonance for the narcissist. They expect resistance, defense, a reaction they can exploit. When none comes, their strategies collapse. Their projection has nowhere to land. Their accusations echo back to them unanswered. Their rage burns without fuel. The quiet becomes louder than any words because it signals a shift in power. It announces, without announcement, that you are no longer available as their supply. That realization shakes the foundation of their illusion. For the one who has endured narcissistic manipulation, cultivating this silence requires profound discipline. The urge to defend yourself, to expose their lies, to prove your innocence can feel overwhelming. But the moment you step into that arena, you are playing by their rules. The strength of inner silence is the refusal to play, the awareness that truth does not need a courtroom to exist. It does not require witnesses to remain real. Truth simply is, and your silence honors it more than any defense could. Inner silence is also a profound act of self-preservation. Engaging with a narcissist drains your energy, corrodes your confidence, and traps you in cycles of endless debate. Silence cuts the cord. It conserves your strength for the life that exists beyond their influence. It allows you to redirect your energy toward growth, healing, and authenticity. In silence, you reclaim yourself. You stop being an actor in their performance and return to being the author of your own script. To outsiders, silence may appear passive, but those who have walked this path know its weight. It is not easy to withhold words when your name is smeared, when lies spread, when accusations sting. But true strength is measured not in how loudly you fight back, but in how deeply you trust that lies cannot erase truth. The narcissist counts on your reaction to validate their story. Silence denies them that validation. It places you outside their reach, untouchable in a way they cannot accept. Silence also disrupts the cycle of trauma bonding. When you no longer respond to their bait, you break the chemical loop of conflict and reconciliation that keeps you bound. You stop waiting for their apology, their recognition, their shift in behavior. Instead, you anchor yourself in stillness, and in that stillness you find clarity. You begin to see that their chaos was never about you. It was always about them. That realization frees you in a way no confrontation ever could. The strength of inner silence is not just about withholding words. It is about embodying presence without reaction. It is about walking into a storm and carrying calm that cannot be touched. It is about choosing peace over performance, dignity over drama, truth over theatrics. And though it may infuriate the narcissist, it elevates you beyond their reach. In silence, you do not lose your voice. You discover its highest power. Your silence does not mean defeat. It means you have stepped beyond the battlefield altogether. It is the quiet declaration that you are no longer prey, no longer participant, no longer defined by their narrative. It is strength in its purest form because it cannot be provoked, it cannot be manipulated, and it cannot be controlled. Inner silence is the end of their illusion and the beginning of your sovereignty power. Ours is one of the most misunderstood forces in human relationships. Many see it only as domination, as the ability to control, to bend others to one's will, to stand above. The narcissist lives by this definition. To them, power is a zero-sum game where someone must lose for them to win. Their entire identity is built around appearing superior, invulnerable, and in control. Yet, this is not true power. It is only the performance of it. Real power is something altogether different. Real power does not need an audience, nor does it require submission from others. Real power is transformation, and it begins within. The transformation of power occurs when you stop seeing it as a tool for control and start experiencing it as a state of being. It is the shift from external dominance to internal sovereignty. For those who have endured the cycle of narcissistic manipulation, this transformation is profound. At first, power seems like something you must reclaim from them, as though it was stolen. But in truth, they never owned it. They only borrowed it from your belief in their illusion. When you awaken to this, the transformation begins. A narcissist wields control by exploiting weakness, your self-doubt, your need for approval, your desire to be understood. They weaponize your vulnerabilities against you, creating the illusion that they are stronger. But when you confront those vulnerabilities, when you transform fear into awareness, dependence into independence, and wounds into wisdom, their leverage evaporates. They can no longer touch you in the places you have healed. This is the essence of the transformation of power. You no longer fight them on their battlefield because you have risen beyond it. This transformation is not loud. It does not announce itself with aggression or revenge. Instead, it is quiet, steady, and unshakable. It is the moment you realize that no one defines your worth but you. It is the calm in your voice when they try to provoke you. It is the steadiness in your eyes when they try to intimidate you. It is the refusal to explain yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. Power, once transformed, becomes unassailable because it is no longer rooted in the shifting sands of others' approval. It lives in the bedrock of your truth. The narcissist cannot understand this kind of power because it cannot be manipulated. They expect you to fight back, to argue, to rage, because in doing so, you remain entangled in their script. But when your power has transformed, you do not fight. You stand. You do not argue, You do not retaliate, you rise. And in that rising, the entire dynamic shifts. They find themselves swinging at shadows, screaming into silence, trying desperately to provoke a reaction that never comes. Transformation of power is not about becoming untouchable in the sense of being hardened or closed off. It is about becoming untouchable because you no longer rely on them for your sense of identity. Your validation no longer comes from their approval, their attention, or their recognition. It comes from the integrity of living authentically, aligned with your values and free from their illusions. This form of power is not armor, it is light. And light does not fight darkness, it simply shines until the shadows have no place left to hide. What makes this transformation so liberating is that it redefines strength itself. Strength is no longer measured by how much you can endure from them, but by how little of them you allow into your reality. Strength is no longer the ability to survive their storms, but the wisdom to step out of them altogether. Strength becomes effortless, not because life is without challenges, but because you are no longer bound to the endless cycle of manipulation and control. This transformation also has ripple effects far beyond the narcissist. It changes how you relate to the world. Where once you may have tolerated disrespect, you now set boundaries with ease. Where once you sought external validation, you now live from internal certainty. Where once fear dictated your choices, now clarity guides them. Power no longer feels like a weapon to wield or a prize to win. It feels like freedom. Perhaps the most profound aspect of the transformation of power is that it is not about defeating the narcissist, but about transcending them. In their world, victory means someone else's loss. But in your transformation, victory means no longer needing to play their game. You do not win because they lose. You win because their presence no longer defines you. That is power in its highest forms, the power to exist fully, freely, and authentically, untouched by their illusions. The transformation of power is the journey from survival to sovereignty. It is the moment you realize that the narcissist's grip was never as strong as it seemed. It was your belief in their strength that kept you bound. When that belief dissolves, when you reclaim your voice, your worth, and your peace, you discover that true power does not dominate, it liberates. It frees you not only from them, but from every chain of dependence, fear, and illusion that once held you captive. And in that freedom, power is no longer something you chase, defend, or prove. It is simply who you are.